High-speed police chases and wanton and reckless driving on the part of police kill hundreds of people, including law enforcement officials, alleged criminals, as well as innocent civilians every year in the United States. While authorities are engaged in high-speed police chases or pursuits, there can be complete disregard for the safety of other drivers as officers continue the chase well after the danger outweighs the need to apprehend the suspect. More people in the United States are killed by high-speed pursuits and wanton and reckless driving by the police than they are by police firearms. And yet these wrongful deaths from car accidents will likely continue year after year. That is why 2/3 of those injured or killed in fatal car accidents stemming from police chases or pursuits are innocent drivers and pedestrians that have nothing to do with the chase. In this insider-exclusive investigative special, we go behind the headlines in police auto accidents, Anna Rodriguez's story, to examine how David Godosky, partner at Godosky and Gentile, successfully represented the Rodriguez's family in an extremely tragic accident that occurred on January 4th, 2003 in Brooklyn, New York, and that took the life of 63-year-old Anna Rodriguez, a grandmother and a mother of 4 daughters, who was also a hard-working factory worker. Anna was struck by an unmarked NYPD vehicle driven by police officer Anthony Russo. Anna had been walking to church and was crossing the street at an intersection when the fatality occurred. She was rushed to the hospital and was diagnosed with multiple fractures to her skull, ribs, leg, and ankle, and suffered massive internal bleeding. She died within minutes. Anna's family was extremely close. Her tragic death was a devastating emotional blow, and her family carried this legal case forward with a sense of duty, love, and loyalty to their mother and her memory. Today, for the first time ever on national TV, the insider-exclusive investigative TV series will show how the Rodriguez's family lawyer, David Godosky, was able to prove with the assistance of an accident reconstruction expert and an eyewitness that the NYPD's account of the accident differed dramatically from what the jury really believed happened on that fatal night. And as a result, the jury found overwhelming evidence that the police had operated their vehicle recklessly and were liable for Anna's death and awarded $4 million to her estate. Throughout his distinguished career, David Godosky has earned a reputation as an unyielding advocate and trial lawyer who repeatedly represents individual men, women, and families against large corporations, law enforcement, and the government, and repeatedly wins. David has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in New York and in America. And he has built a substantial reputation nationwide by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down. David's spirit and dedication is often compared to President Teddy Roosevelt's, especially when it comes to being in the courtroom in the arena he knows so well. For as he often says, it is not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out how the strong man stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, daring greatly so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. David's amazing courtroom skills and his headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from New York City. It is my great pleasure to introduce David Godosky to the show. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm, what kind of law your firm practices primarily.
Well, we are essentially trial lawyers. We deal with catastrophic injury cases, cases where working people and families have had their lives destroyed because of some sort of tragic occurrence. And generally, we are the firm that people come to when they need that matter to go to trial. We will also handle complex commercial litigation that requires trial work. We also represent judges and lawyers that are brought before various disciplinary boards and need representation in that matter.
We have a case today of Ana Rodriguez, which is a very unfortunate, tragic situation. Tell our audience a little bit about who Ana was and what happened.
Ana Rodriguez was really the matriarch of the Rodriguez family. Her husband had predeceased her. She was in her late 60s and was the mother of 4 daughters. She had worked in the floor of a factory. She had basically supported these 4 children. She was living with 2 of her daughters and grandchildren, and she was actually attending a charismatic church event on the night when her life was tragically taken from her.
And as you're talking, we're showing some street scenes that were taken by the police.
Yes.
Where what happened? She stepped into the crosswalk.
Yeah, she was crossing Wilson Avenue near Grove Street in Brooklyn, New York, and the pictures you have and the video you have is really taken by the police department because this involved a police department vehicle. She was struck and killed by a police car that apparently was responding to a call some blocks away.
Now, this is the big issue when you say was responding to a call, because when Ana stepped into the crosswalk and the police car came basically around the corner, the police made their position was what? Well,
you said some things in there that are interesting. They took 2 different positions, or different than what we found the truth to be. The first is that they said they were responding to a call where a man had a gun. That changed the law quite a bit for Miss Rodriguez. When a police vehicle, an emergency vehicle, is responding to a call, they're afforded greater leeway than you or I might have in operating our car. And they have to be held, you have to have a higher standard of culpability to have a case against them. It's not mere negligence, but they have to be reckless because they're allowed to travel at high speeds, they're allowed to go through red lights, things of that nature.
Yeah, because they have to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by setting forth that position that they were responding to a scene, an emergency call with lights and sirens, they were instantly giving themselves greater protection in case of an accident. They had also indicated that you had said that when they came around the corner, that was not the police version of how this accident occurred. If you have some of the video and some of the photographs will show that Wilson Avenue is pretty much a dead straightaway street in Brooklyn, and it was the police version of events that they were coming down Wilson Avenue for some period of time with lights and sirens on, warning anybody that for a great distance who was crossing Wilson Avenue that their vehicle was approaching. The Rodriguez family had actually gone to another firm before us, and they were told that they didn't have a case because of this reckless standard and the fact that the police and eyewitnesses had indicated that their vehicle had been coming down Wilson Avenue with lights and sirens. Elizabeth Rodriguez, who knew her mother obviously very well, could not reconcile that version of events with the woman that she knew and had raised her. That somebody who would have been so careful and have lights and sirens and blaring
would step in front of a police car.
Correct. And that didn't sit well with her, it didn't sit well with us, and that the daughter's insistence that we look at the matter, and as the physical evidence began to be examined more closely, the police version of events began to fall apart.
Yeah, now let's talk about the evidence as it came up, because this bolstered your case. You had an eyewitness.
That's correct.
That you used, and we're going to show a deposition. His name is Antonio Marrero, correct?
Correct.
I want to go right now to his version of what happened. We have a video deposition, so let's do that right now.
Mr. Marrero, can you describe for us what you observed as you were on Wilson Avenue just before 6 p.m. on January 4th, 2003?
Well, sir, a car coming from inside the housing project with the light, with blinking light.
Okay, and just as you say, you saw a car coming from the housing project.
Yes, a light.
The position of your car, was that housing project to your left or to your right?
To my left.
And what did you see that car do?
They coming from inside. Then once that they hit the road in Wilson, they put the swing, and I hear impact. Then when my light changed, I got a green, proceed, and I saw a body in the middle of the street, and I stopped my car. I run over. There was a old lady. She was like crying and moving her leg.
Before that vehicle came out of the housing project onto Wilson, before that, did you hear any siren from that car?
No.
Did you see any blinking lights before it came onto
Yes.
Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes. The left side damaged with the middle down.
The left side of the car?
The police car.
Is that the driver's side or the passenger?
Driver's side.
Okay.
Then when I ran to the person that was on the floor, on the ground, there's a police car with a uniform that was stopped before, right in the Wilson, with the intersection inside, and they ran up to me, try to help out the person.
Does this document reflect what you told the police about how the accident happened?
No. This one here?
Yes.
No.
When you left the precinct on January 4th, 2003, when you left to go home, were you aware that the police department had two different statements with your signature on it?
Yes.
Objection.
Did anybody at the police department tell you why they were taking two statements from you?
No.
Was it two different police officers who sat
Yes.
down with you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, it is a fact that Antonio Marrero signed two contradictory statements as to what happened on that night, correct?
That is correct.
How did you what was the challenges you had with that? Because in one case, and by the way, in one report by a detective, he substantiated the fact that the police car did have its lights on, did have its sirens on, and in another one they didn't, correct?
That's correct.
How did you present this to the jury? Because the defense was obviously using this to their advantage, or trying to, right?
Right. They definitely tried to use it to their advantage. We never saw it that way. We saw it really as a situation that was only helpful to our case and to Mr. Marrero's credibility. As you can imagine, when there's a death involving a police vehicle, there's a massive police response and investigation.
Right.
So we were given many documents and many witness statements, and most of them were corroborative of the police version. But when we were able to keep asking for material, we eventually got the two statements from Mr. Marrero.
Yes.
And they were fairly detailed statements. They're police reports involving a vehicle and a death. So they asked for specific information, and as you indicated, there were two completely different versions, both signed by Mr. Marrero. The interesting part of it was, though, that there were parts of one that were actually written by Mr. Marrero within the substance of the document.
Yeah.
And the other one did not have Mr. Marrero's handwriting at all. And that was a version that simply said that the vehicle had been coming straight down Wilson Avenue with the lights and sirens.
And this statement was taken by a separate detective?
Correct. Two different detectives at two different times.
Would it be safe to say, would it be accurate to say, that the second statement was taken by another detective so it would substantiate their position, knowing full well that it contradicted his earlier statement?
That was a fair interpretation of the evidence. Mr. Marrero was of the position that he never actually signed any statement that set forth facts that were supportive of the police version of events. He said that he would not have signed such a statement, but he did sign numerous documents at the police department, and they did keep him at the police department even though he had signed a statement at the scene for hours and hours until he signed another set of forms, and he believed and did testify that it was his belief that the second document was filled in after he left the police station.
Yeah. Now, we also have part of this video deposition of Antonio and you showing an aerial photograph of the accident scene. I want to go to that right now.
Mr. Marrero, on January 4th, 2003, did you in fact see a car in the area that you've described in Plaintiff's Exhibit 3?
Were they coming from there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
They coming from there? They're coming from nobody else? Nobody else coming from there?
With respect to the car that's shown in Plaintiff's Exhibit 5, as you sit here today, do you have any doubt in your mind that this was the car that you saw come out of or off the sidewalk and make the turn into Wilson Avenue?
Yes.
You have any doubt about that?
Yes.
Okay. Are you sure that's the car?
Yeah, that's the car.
Okay.
What's the car?
As we can see, there was a lot of controversy about what actually happened, and some of my questions right now are going to be directed towards suing the police department, if you have to sue the police department, and what actually takes place, because it's kind of difficult. You have the blue line, if you will, right? You have a group standing behind their own saying this didn't happen. That traditionally happens, right?
Yeah, that does happen, and it's a very important question because one of the things that we really pride ourselves on in this firm is the speed with which we can attack a case.
Yeah.
There's nothing more important when there's a catastrophic incident and the family is grieving and there's a tremendous loss.
Yeah.
They really do have their guard down because your viewers have to understand that while that is happening, the defendant in the case is not similarly grieved. They are working on their defense to the case. And when you have the police department, which is the agency charged with the investigation itself, being involved in the case, before you even have an opportunity to move off of go, that agency is already putting together witness statements and paperwork to support their position and form that blue line, if you will. And that's exactly what transpired in this case. So before the Rodriguez family was even aware that their mother had been tragically killed, the police department was having multiple documents signed by witnesses and putting together evidence, and other police officers responding to the scene were giving statements that were supportive of the route that had purportedly been taken.
Yeah,
by
but
the
they weren't
vehicle.
there. They weren't there.
That's correct. But there was no way for the Rodriguez family to do that,
Yeah.
but for the fact that luckily Antonio Marrero, a taxi cab driver, not only was there, not only gave an honest accounting, but the reason that we have him on videotape is because at the time that the case went to trial, he was attending to his daughter who was dying of cancer in Texas.
Right.
And he, just by being a good Samaritan, willingly came back from Texas to provide that testimony, which was obviously critical to helping out the Rodriguez family.
Now, what should, this is directed to everybody that's watching this show, but if you happen to be a witness to an accident like this, do you need a lawyer when the police start asking you questions? Is it wise to have one? Well, because oftentimes people will put words in your mouth, especially Antonio. I think English was not his native tongue, correct?
That's correct.
So maybe there was a misunderstanding with what was going on and what he was signing.
Yeah, you generally like to think that when, in the vast majority of cases that they're going to be handled appropriately. You do have to go in with your eyes wide open when you realize that it is the agency that may have the liability is also doing the investigation.
Yeah.
But I think probably my best advice to any witness is obviously beyond telling the truth and cooperating, is that it would always be wise to ask to receive a copy of the statement that you're given at that time, if you are being asked to sign a statement, and maintain it so that you're never in a position of being told that you said or did something other than what was given.
And most people wouldn't think about that, would they?
No, you don't think about it, because especially when you're speaking to police and they have an actual form which you're realizing is going to be a police document, you may not have the forethought to say, could I just get a Xerox copy of that? But it's very important because not only do documents get lost, but documents get changed.
Yes.
And also memories fade. So it's important to maintain a record of what you see and what you gave.
Let's talk about, the police, law enforcement isn't like any other defendant. Like you mentioned here, the fox guarding the hen house, they're also investigating their own incident. So sometimes they can be biased. What are some of the difficulties in suing the police?
Well, there are procedural difficulties, of course, because you have to, as with any municipality and municipal agency, you have to give them early notice, and that's something that all your viewers should know.
What does that mean?
That means that in a case involving the city, where we practice in the city of New York, or agencies of the city of New York, the time frame in which you must give that agency notice that there may be a claim is 90 days.
If you don't do it within 90 days, you're out of luck.
There are procedural methods that you can undertake to perhaps file it late, but there's no guarantee as to that, and that can be denied. So if you are beyond the 90 days, your claim is in jeopardy.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the program. You did a great job on this show, and had it not been for your quick response to, the statute of limitations and investigating it thoroughly, the Rodriguez family would not have gotten justice. And thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.